Hi everyone, my name is Cristina Villegas. I am the Director of Mining at PACT, and I'm really pleased to be with you today. I'm here to talk about some of our programs in East Africa, and yeah, really pleasure to be here. So if you have questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat. There's no silly question, and I'm happy to take 10 minutes at the end to answer really any question you have. So we'll go ahead and get started. So this is Innovations in Responsible Sourcing of Gemstones, an update from East Africa. So who am I? I'm the Director of Mining at PACT. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I am a specialist in African development, and with this kind of this weird specialty in mining, which we'll talk about in a moment. I have about 20 years of experience. I've been to about 50 countries around the world in a work capacity. And I specialize in jewelry relevant materials, although I can work on other materials like tin and cobalt and copper. But I just like gold and gemstones especially. And my favorite gemstone after working in Tanzania's Umba Valley are Umba garnets, mainly because the beauty, the color, and also because they're in my price range. So, and that picture of me was in Liberia. I was sharing lunch with some Liberian gold miners about 11 hours from the capital city, and they were mining on the forest edge of a conservation area. So they invited me to share their rice, so I did. So who's PACT? PACT, I joke that we're the biggest nonprofit that you've never heard of. And people laugh, but then they see that we work in more than 40 countries. We have 5,000 staff. We mostly do health, but we have this small little program called the Mines to Markets program, and that's the one that I lead. And it's pretty unusual amongst nonprofits. And in this picture here is Masaidi, and she is a tourmaline miner, and she's the boss of this pit, and she has hired workers to dig for her. So this presentation kind of moves the conference topic from the kind of science of gems to the social aspects of gems, and more consumers are asking, where do these gemstones come from? And possibly even who mined my gem. And a lot of even jewelry professionals don't know that most colored gemstones, about 80 to 90%, come from a part of the mining industry called artisanal and small scale miners. Now you might ask, artisanal miners, are these hipsters? No, they're not. There's not a better name. Sometimes we call them traditional miners. Sometimes we call them subsistence miners. But for now, we're calling them artisanal and small-scale miners. In general, they use shovels and picks and human strength to dig minerals out of the ground. So it usually is a rural farmer who's using the proceeds from that mine to fund their farm. And about 30%. So specifically, ASM is artisanal mining and small scale mining kind of crushed together. Artisanal mining is like truly the most rudimentary form of mining. People, using shovels and picks. If you can use it, if you can reach a shovel, that's artisanal mining. If you need more mechanization, when you have a lot of people and excavators and dump trucks, environment, so we call it ASM. And the biggest part of the mining sector is actually this group of people. They work in 70 plus countries around the world. There's 42 million of them. And I have some stats about how each miner has between 5 and 9 children. Each mining job on site at an ASM mine creates 7 jobs in country. And ASM is the largest non-farm employment in Africa. If that kind of gives you an idea about just the purpose, just the role of ASM in many rural livelihoods. And so ASM overall produce about 10% of all minerals worldwide. But while it's 10%, it's 90% of all labor is ASM. So they're inefficient. It's 10% output, 90% of all labor is because they're not mechanized. You hear about child labor, you hear about conflict. This is often in ASM settings and not in this larger scale, more commercial scale settings. So but I just want to go back to that last slide. Sometimes people say, oh, that illegal mining happening over there. ASM can be perfectly legal, and I want to make sure that people know that. It depends on artisanal miners. You could have the same people say, oh, that mining happening over there. The question to ask is, what kind of mining? Is it large scale industrial? Is it small scale, or is it artisanal? Because each mining type has different capacities, human and financial, to manage the impacts. And all the photos here are actually of my program called Moyo Gems. And then the Moyo Gem story begins actually in Carlsbad when the Gemological Institute of America reached out to PACT because they realized that through their field gemology expeditions, they realized that the miners, the people who were producing these stones, knew the least about them, and they needed some kind of gemstone education to really improve in a systemic way their status. And GIA was really troubled by this, by the lack of information that the miners had, even what the minerals were used for in some cases. So GIA approached PACT because we had this kind of weird specialty in ASM, and I said I'm delighted to help miners improve their market skills. But do you mind if we start with women? Because they are the most invisible of the entire mining sector. They are always forgotten. And because people don't think of women when they think of mining, they are always overlooked in terms of training programs. And they face enormous discrimination on accessing pits, on accessing education. And GIA said, if there's a problem, let's go for it. So we started with women as a pilot class, and we focused on rural women because if you focus your training in capital cities, which is easy to do, and you deliver in English, only the elite of that country is going to be attending, and they don't really need the training. It's the people in the far-flung areas who can't make it to the capital city, who maybe cannot afford or don't know that training is happening. So we really focused on rural locations closest to the mines. And we started with women, but we eventually opened to men in later editions of the training. So this is Marvin Wambua. He's a Kenyan gemologist, a Kenyan GG, and he helped deliver the training in Swahili with Robert Weldon and the GIA team. And they taught the miners about how to evaluate their rough, how to clean it, how not to break it. If you have a big crystal specimen, don't break it. There's markets for that because they might break it thinking, oh, they have 50 gems instead of just one really kind of crazy one. And then how to evaluate it, and kind of look through a cutter's eyes, how to evaluate. So it might look like a big stone if you look at it this way, and then if you turn it, you actually notice it's actually rather hard to cut. It has limited cutting potential. And another thing was, sometimes miners just don't know the prices, and so they'll Google it, and they'll put like Savarite Kenya price, and they'll see these thousands of dollar price points, not realizing that that price point is because that Tsavorite is the top quality. It is clear and bright, and it's been set into beautiful jewelry. And that's a retail location, and it might take a long time to sell that piece of jewelry. So instead of like demanding thousands of dollars, and failing as a miner, we kind of told them, how it moves through the market. Okay, what happens after it leaves your mine, and showed them before and after pictures of cutting. The results were improved confidence in gem sales. Sorry, some technical difficulty. They learned gem evaluation principles, and most especially, they learned how to sort before sale. And this was a big breakthrough, because what we had noticed was that no one had told these ladies how to present their gems, because of course when you share that knowledge, people start to gain power through knowledge. And so they were just selling their gems like all together, the top quality rubies with the low grade, milky rubies. And they didn't know the difference, because no one had told them, because they wanted them to remain vulnerable, let's be honest. So just some basic sorting skills, and some follow-ups by Marvin. We saw tremendous impact in terms of their income. So on average, they had their incomes increase between 3 and 5 times what they were making before, which, if you can appreciate, this was a small test effort, and we increased their incomes between 3 and 5 times. I was so moved by that. So this is a quote from Marvin. It's a quote from just his perceptions of the training, and he said, at the beginning of the training, when we first met these ladies, I didn't see anything worth cutting. But as we progressed, the sample quality improved. And in our last visit, I saw gems worth working on. And this kind of gave me the chills, because it means that the ladies really started understanding the purpose of the class. They are really applying their knowledge and bringing the better samples and bringing what would sell at the highest price. And that's success. And meanwhile, I was speaking at a lot of different jewelry events, because in North America, jewelry people like hearing from people like me, because it's kind of unusual to hear from people who go to mines a lot. And I was telling the stories of these ladies, like Teresia here, or like Salma and Eunice in the back. And they were really connecting with their stories, and just what it's like to be a female miner in a rural place, and everything that you have to work through. And the reform movement is here. I think we're all tired of talk. I think we're all hungry for action. And at the same time, in evaluation sessions, the miners kept telling us that that while their incomes increased, they still have limited opportunities to sell on a consistent basis. So they would sell when they're hungry, because they didn't know when the next market would be, or when the next sale opportunity could be. They wanted consistency and better markets. So basically, we decided to make this happen, and I met 2 traders at a conference, and a technology company, and we decided to go back to Tanzania and talk to the ladies to see what they had to say. So our partner in this, the GIA program, IMPACT, was the Tanzanian Women Miners Association, and it's called Tamoma. We sat with them for 2 days, just asking, are you interested in this? How to make this work for you? What are your current challenges with selling your gemstones? And together we co-designed this very unique mine-to-market program. And you can see it's a schoolhouse with like appealing paint and chalkboards. And I remember one of the things that the ladies asked for, if there was any kind of philanthropic reinvestment, was teacher housing. And I said, why teacher housing? Talk to me about that. And they said, that actually the teacher, one of the teachers went in the group, she was just listening, and she grabbed my hand and she's like, let me show you. And then so we went to her house, which is just a couple steps away. And she showed me this house, which was 2 bedrooms, actually no, it was 3 bedrooms, which all the teachers were sharing. And the point of that was, she said, you can't attract good teachers if they don't have proper housing. We're all sharing this one house. And so the women wanted good teachers to have quality education for their children. About a year later, we launched Moyo Gems. And I always say that Moyo Gems is my dream come true, because I was always really troubled by the long anonymous route to global markets. The miner gets lost in that. But with Moyo, we believe in radical traceability. And so we can actually tell you the name of the miner who mined that gem. Happy to answer that question about how we do that. But okay, what are the rules that we ended up creating with the ladies? You have to be Tanzanian and live in the 6 villages that actually GIA served. You have to be a member of Tamoma, that Association of Women Miners, because we want to strengthen that organization. You have to take that free gemology training, and we came back and delivered some more. You have to take a free health and safety course. This is all in their language, in their village, and minimal time. And then the 5th one was the most difficult that I was expecting, but we worked through it. You have to prove that you're working on a legal license. And I'm happy to talk about that in the Q&A. This is probably the biggest hurdle that I think any responsible initiative will have. We did it with a compromise and eagerness of the Tanzanian government. And it's a compromise. That's what we ended up doing. So, and then the last 2 rules, you can only sell gemstones that you yourself mined. And if we find synthetic, we can actually break it down to that miner and you're out of the program. And actually, we've actually had that happen once. It was a man who sold it to us, and he was kicked out. So he was called in front of the RMO, the regional mining officer, and expelled from the program because we had to set an example. You only sell the gems that you mine, and if someone tries to sell you their stones, how do you know they're not synthetics? It might be jeopardizing your success in the program. So this one of the pictures here is of a female miner signing up for the program, and in this case, she signed her name. But in this village, there's a lot of women who cannot read or write, and so we have a little ink pad that we use. So they can put the thumb in the ink pad and use that to sign their name. And that's just one of those realities of rural economies. Women are often the last to be put in school and the first to be taken out. So we actually have quite a few who cannot read and write. And about 60% of all the miners in the program have only gone to some primary school. They haven't even graduated primary school. So these are the most vulnerable people, and we're serving them. And they have beautiful gemstones. This is Raheli. She's one of our more photogenic miners. She signed a consent form, so all the miners, we had it in Swahili. We read it to them, and so they know that we're using their pictures, and we only use their first name. But yeah, Raheli is one of my favorites. So what did we achieve for Moyo? They're making 95% of the export value of their stone. This is between 3 and 10 times what they're making before. And it's because we shortened the supply chain. We did not cut out brokers altogether. We have included 6 local brokers in the program. They benefit about 5% of the transaction goes to them, 95 towards the miners. And again, happy to talk about that in the questions if it comes up. So the women get the consistent, predictable markets that they asked for. They get to be paid in full as they asked for. They had discussed with us how under the old system, they were only paid half of what they are owed, and the broker would promise to pay them the other half when he sold the stone. But you can imagine sometimes the brokers just disappeared with their money, or just lied to them about what it was sold for. So we asked the ladies, okay, who would you recommend that we work with? Who's from this community? And that's how we found the brokers that we work with, the people who they had trusted, who had not run off, and who were good people before the program was there. And so through this program, we've documented closer relationships with those brokers, because we team them up. We have the miners and the brokers co-negotiate with the exporter, and it's a win-win. The higher the price, the miner is happy, the broker is happy, and the broker feels a part of this program. We also offer free health and safety training, free economic empowerment programs, and then it's a market built for them. And a lot of the ladies are Maasai, not all, but we have quite a big Maasai group. And in the Maasai culture, looking at a man in the eyes, a man that you're not related to, is an offense. And so imagine trying to negotiate when you can't look somebody in the eye. You send your husband, you send your brother, or you negotiate very weak position. And the Maasai ladies told us that the reason that they are coming, because they're coming to these markets, is because they know it's a women's market, a market made for them. And I've been kind of shameless in the field, saying, in these village settings, saying, men, look at the ladies next to you and thank them, because they've allowed you into the program. So we have 60% of the miners are ladies, and 40% are men. And this is also to keep village harmony, to make sure that women are not targets, and that the men that were working alongside women continue to do so, and there's not negative relations. So more pictures of Moyo Gems. They're beautiful stones, right? If they're ugly stones with a beautiful story, we probably won't be successful, but they're beautiful stones with a beautiful story, with full traceability. So this is the lunch. They made me stand in front of all these events. I wanted to be in the back, and they're like, no, you have to sit in front. So that's why I'm front and center. This is Selma on the right-hand side with a thumb up. She's the president of Tamoma. And this is Monica and Stuart. Monica is of Moyo Gems, and Stuart is a company called 1948. He's in the UK, and Monica's in Seattle. And they were the ones that in that old schoolhouse. We've since added another trader. And Pacta will work with almost anyone who wants to be a part of responsible sourcing. It might not be part of Moyo, because we have some criteria for traders. But if you have a mine that you're sourcing from and you want to establish traceability, or you want to work on some issues, we'll work with you. This invitation to reach out, and we can create something special together based on your current supply chains. COVID-19, of course, has affected everything, has made this conference virtual. For Moyo, and for gem miners worldwide, you might have been hearing about how travel stopped by the international gem traders, because borders closed. People didn't know what COVID would bring, and for most of the gem trade, it was a shocking loss of business. For Moyo, we did not know what to do. I couldn't sleep, and because our model had brought international traders to this area, and then those traders couldn't travel anymore. But we innovated. We actually decided to elevate our local partners to keep the markets going. So initially we did drop-offs of food and soap and water, and talked about COVID. But then we knew that the most responsible thing we could do was restart the market, because food dependence happens very quickly, and we don't want to create that kind of indirect impact. We want to get commerce going. We want to keep people self-sufficient, and we want to keep our promise to these communities that we promised we'd be here for a while. So our exporter actually now buys on behalf of the international traders, international traders are eager to come back, and the miners want them to come back because, before the miner would be in her village and never have the opportunity to talk to an international trader. They weren't very happy with the exporter, buying on behalf of the traders, but they understood why. And now, we've made videos before the market days to talk about how important the exporter is, to thank him. We've been told over and over again, thank you for coming back. Thank you for not abandoning us. And we've since actually moved the market from a government building about 2 hours away from the mines to the village itself. And that's been a huge improvement for the miners, just convenience. Because, we should be the ones compromising, not the miners. Like, we should be the one moving to them. So, so you can see the Moyo Gems hand washing station. Masking is, and you can see this picture, we have some work to do on consistency of masks, but, slowly, slowly, or pole, pole, as they say here in Tanzania. So what is next? I am delighted to tell you that we are expanding. It's thanks to funding from the World Bank, their EGPS fund, which is kind of NGO speak, kind of that. But the Association of Women in Extractive Industries in Kenya, they're Tawoma's sister organization. They're independent, but the same thing. And they've been kind of watching over the border about what's happening in Tanzania, and have been talking to me for a while about doing something similar in Kenya. And I was delighted that we won this competitive grant, and we're doing it. So we're expanding to Kenya's Taita Taveta County, which is just over the border. You can see in the map there. We're in the Umba Valley. That's where Tonga, and that's where the original program was. We're expanding to Taita Taveta, and then we're also expanding to Ruby country in Tanzania, a place called Morogoro. So that's happening in 2022, and I couldn't be more excited for that. So, the question, before, if you asked, who mined your gem, most people would agree it's impossible to know, because global supply chains, the way they are, the exporters send it to Thailand, Sri Lanka, China, wherever. Everything gets mixed, origin gets lost, and a miner gets lost pretty quickly, all that. But now we're able to answer that question. In this case, it's Mwanahawa who mined your gem. And again, these are all Moyo Gems. We have an Instagram, it's Moyo Gems. And I do a lot of tweeting and Instagramming about just jewelry sector and different changes that are happening. And we have these trading partners who are co-founders of the program. So Moyo is a brand that, and behind it is Tawoma, Pact, these trading partners, and Everledger, the blockchain provider. I just want to end with a story that we've been getting a lot of attention, which is wonderful. But sometimes the miners have no idea, people are talking about them. Sometimes they're on Instagram. We actually have a couple of miners on Instagram that will comment and send me messages. And but we were in Vogue magazine about a year ago, in British Vogue, which I've been told is the best Vogue of all of them. And the story was written by a woman named Rachel Garahan, and it started off with describing a woman named Annabella Chan, who's in London. And Annabella had seen a picture of Prishka, one of the miners that we work with, and Prishka has like this like toothy grin, and she's like always ready for that picture. Anyways, and so I was just shocked that like a miner is mentioned in Vogue magazine, and I don't know if that's happened before. I don't know if it's happened before. But the pandemic hit, or we were in the midst of the pandemic. So it was only a few days ago that I was able to give that copy, that magazine, to Prishka, so she can read. Well, she barely speaks English, so someone else can kind of translate for her. But I showed her where her name was, and she was overwhelmed to be, we had to explain what Vogue was, and part of the beauty of Moyo is that we have these deep connections with communities, and I get these huge hugs when I come back. And these women and these men are no longer invisible to the international jewelry market. So with that, I say thank you. So I'll take your questions. And looking at the questions. I'm not seeing the questions, Chris.
Hi, Cristina.
Hi.
You should be able to see, can you see a questions tab on the right-hand side?
Questions, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
So, okay. I'll let you take them.
Maybe you can read them to me?
Sure. So let's see, we've got quite a few here. So
I'm still in East Africa, by the way, so you can hear the roosters outside.
So someone's asking, I was hesitant at first whether this program would bring enough value to local communities, but I will never forget the gratitude shown by the miners and community leaders when leading the GIA program in Lemshuku and Longido. It was an experience that deeply changed my view of the complexities in mining communities and the possibilities for improvement. So I think that was really more just a statement than a question.
Yeah.
Question, if most of the women don't read or write, how are they being taught in your program? How can you evaluate what they have learned or work on a legal license? I would be interested in learning your method of teaching and your understanding of whether they have learned the information or not.
All right, thank you. Thank you for reading the questions, by the way. I appreciate that. Yeah, so when we do the exit surveys, so in the Moyo markets, we do customer service surveys at the end. And so they have they enter a room that's sorting, where it sorts all the material. The brokers do that. Then they go into the buying room, and then they go into the low value stones room, where we've just started buying lower value stones on behalf of different jewelers. And then there's a customer service area, and we read the questions in Swahili. So we have all Tanzanian staff. I'm actually no longer there these days, except to just check on the program. So yeah, they have a conversation about what their expectations were. What did you expect? What typically what we expect for this kind of stone previously, that kind of thing. And then at the end of a GIA program, we also do one-on-one surveys verbally in Swahili. So they don't need to be able to read and fill out a survey. It's actually more effective for us to have a conversation about it. So that's how it's done.
Thanks, Cristina. Next question here. What is the law concerning exporting rough stones from Tanzania?
Yep, you have to be a dealer with a license to export in Tanzania and in that region. So our dealer has a license in Arusha and a license in Tanga. When we expand to Morogoro, we'll have to have a dealer's license in Morogoro. And they have a limit on the size of the rough that can be exported without it being cut. So we have to respect those limits. So sometimes the sapphires are actually too big for us to export because of that law, which is frustrating for the miners because they're like, you wanted big stones, and we're like, actually it's too big. So we hope to eventually grow into cutting locally. But as most people probably know on this call, cutting is a skill that it's very hard to reach the global expectations. So we want to do that very carefully and not create problems and force a recut later.
Okay, great. Next question here. This is quite a long one. Because you have the support of the government with your program, do they receive a percentage of the women's individual sale? If so, how does this affect the ladies' price points? Also, if it's not too personal to ask, does PACT also receive any financial percentage/benefits for their efforts?
Yeah, great questions. So the government loves us because we respect their authority. We don't try to go around the government. I think sometimes it's easy to think that you can work outside the government, and in Tanzania you cannot. You have to make sure that they know what you're doing, or you will be kicked out. They appreciate us because we have our Tanzanian staff make sure to talk to them quite a bit and have reports and respect their authority, and they problem solve as needed. Because our program requires legality, they're happy because they get that license fee. And then also we collect the royalty at the point of sale. So there's, I think it's a 7% royalty, I believe. And it's a little Excel spreadsheet that we have set up. So, you know, if Soma is selling us, you know, $300 worth of garnets, there's a little formula that's automatically set up that takes that royalty. At the end of the day, we pay the government. They're very happy. And then our exporter also pays all the export fees when he exports to our trading partners. As far as PACT goes, we do not take any fee from the miners. It is a free program to them. We are paid just for the cost of running the program. We do not take any profit. It is non-profit. It's actually money losing for us right now, but we're about to make up for that momentarily. As the quantities increase, then it'll still be money losing for us. We're paid a percentage of the international traders' revenues, so not profit, but revenues. And so that pays for the whole program, for us to be there, for us to operate blockchain, and for us to do all the due diligence beforehand. So the miners get their full fee. We do not take a penny from them, except for the government taxation, which they know about. That's the law. And then PACT gets paid by the intermediaries as a percentage of their revenue.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question here is from Patricia. She says, she asks, are there other people doing the same as you do here or there in Africa?
There's a lot of people who are interested, and that was really exciting. When we first launched Moyo, we heard from Zimbabwe, we heard from Nigeria, we heard from Kenya right away, of course. I even heard from Greenland and Colombia. And Brazil, and basically colored gemstone miners who feel like they aren't getting fair prices and like the model that's built around miners. There's another initiative called Moyo Gems. They are focused in Zambia. It's a different model, but it's also the idea is to really empower the miner associations to do direct exports. So I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but they were inspired by the Moyo model and decided to create their own. And you know, I consider them a sister initiative. So, but they're the only ones that I know of that are doing anything similar to what we are right now.
Great. The next question here is from Katerina. She asks, can individuals participate on the grassroots level instead of buying gems?
Oh yeah, so what you can do, you know, if you go to moyogems.com and you click the donate button, that's the most important thing you can do, because that money goes directly into local programs. That pays for economic empowerment programs. That goes towards us reaching more and more miners. That goes to PACT, and you'll get if you're in the UK, you can get a PACT UK receipt if you ask for it. It's set up for Americans. Sorry, I know. But if you're British, you can get a tax receipt. But if you want to support in other ways, we're looking at ways where we can have guest trainers that might be interested in teaching jewelry methods or just cutting skills because one of the cool things that's happened is that Tamoma, our partner, has started staffing up because of the revenues that they're receiving. And they're offering more and more classes to their own members. They started doing direct exports. And so I just talked with them maybe 2 weeks ago, and they would love guest instructors. So if that's you, just send me a note. Or if you have other ideas about how you can plug in, I would welcome that.
Great, thanks, Cristina. There's lots of questions coming in, but we've only got time for one more, I'm afraid, before we break for lunch. So this one comes from Duncan, and he asks, is mining a full-time occupation for most of the miners?
Great question. For probably about half, I had to do a new survey on this because our old survey was when we were just beginning. But I'll have some more data in a few months. But about half are full-time miners. And then they mix livelihoods, so they'll use their incomes for like, you know, to like they have a shared chicken coop that they all benefit from, and then they'll work on other people's farms and things like that. But in this area of the world, most people are in the mining industry. So, but post-pandemic, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is resiliency. You know, how can you encourage miners to, to create like a savings culture? Because let's be honest, in some places it's hot money. And, I remember one of the miners, I met her outside the market day gate, and she had a big smile on her face. And I was like, oh, how did you do? And she said, through an interpreter, she said, Cristina, I made more money in one day than I made all last year. And I was so happy for her. One day and then all last year, I was so happy for her. But I asked her, can you please open a bank account? And then Salma had talked to her about like just buying small, if she wants like a tin roof, small, buy a small, and then eventually you'll get a tin roof. So start thinking about ways to improve your life and don't just go out and eat at restaurants and things like that. These are individual people. We have no control over them, and I do not want to exercise control. But that kind of reinvestment mindset and that kind of savings culture is not necessarily here. So we're hoping to improve that with these savings groups that we're rolling out.
Great, thank you so much again, Cristina, for your talk today. And I put in the chat there for everyone, if Cristina wasn't able to make it to your question, please do email us at events@gema.com and we'll pass them across to Cristina on your behalf. We are going to break for lunch now, and we'll be back at 2:15 with Professor Francois Fage. But Cristina, I'll leave it over to you to wrap up, and thanks everyone for listening in to this morning's talks.
Yeah, so I just really appreciate the invitation. Thank you to everyone who attended, and feel free to reach out, yes, through Chris at the GEMA, and I look forward to being in touch. So thank you very much.